the morning of April 19, 2014, at 6 o'clock, in a karaoke bar in Yuseong District, Daejeon, 3 men in their 20s and a female middle school student were drinking together early in the morning. Their identities were Lee Jae-geun, 25 years old, Heo Jeong-bin, 24 years old, and Lee Nam-dong, 24 years old. The middle school girl was Yang Jeong-won, 15 years old. They spent the night mixing soju and beer, chatting about all sorts of trivial things. They talked about their love lives, stories from their school days about being bullies, embarrassing moments while drinking, and so on. As they laughed and talked for a long time, the atmosphere gradually began to change as they got more and more drunk. One of them speaks up. "Hey, we don't have much money left right now. Isn't there an easy way for us to make a quick buck?" At this, the middle schooler Yang Jeong-won makes a suggestion. She says there's a 45-year-old man named Mr. Kim with whom she had a transactional relationship in the past and that he has a lot of money. Hearing this, the men immediately got excited at the thought that they could extort a large sum of money by threatening him under the pretense of a transactional relationship. "Hey, Jeong-won, contact that bastard right now." They make a plan. Once she sets up a meeting and gives them the motel room number, the group will storm the scene. She immediately called Mr. Kim and arranged a transactional meeting for 100:01. 6:40 in the morning. Yang Jeong-won meets Mr. Kim and goes into the motel. While he's showering first, she texts the group the room number and, just as planned, leaves the door slightly open. Soon after, they entered the room, surrounded Mr. Kim, and began to assault him. At first, their plan was just to scare him and extort money. But Mr. Kim was more defiant than they expected. At first, he seemed so shocked that he couldn't even fight back. But soon, as if he realized their intentions, he insisted he wouldn't give them a single cent, leading to a struggle. Enraged, the group eventually dragged Mr. Kim out in front of the motel and brutally beat him again. They especially targeted his head, striking it repeatedly. At this point, Heo Jeong-bin picked up a large plastic flower pot weighing about 20 kilograms and struck Mr. Kim on the head with it. The impact caused Mr. Kim to lose consciousness. Then, telling him to wake up, they kicked him in the head repeatedly. At the time, Yang Jeong-won, who was a middle school girl, did not participate in the assault but simply stood by and watched. But their evil deeds did not end there. They put the unconscious Mr. Kim into a car and left the scene. While waiting for him to regain consciousness, they drove around the Daejeon area for about 3 hours. Then, around 10:30 in the morning, Mr. Kim faintly regained consciousness and realized that his life was in danger. He begged them to spare his life, but the group demanded his card PIN and once again subjected him to a brutal beating. Then, a short while later, something unexpected happened. Mr. Kim had already suffered blows to the head and endured violence that was close to torture. Unable to withstand it any longer, he stopped breathing. The group panicked, and after leaving the body in the car, they stole his credit card, gold bracelet, watch, and cell phone before fleeing the scene. They then withdrew money and sold the stolen goods, making about 3 million won. They tried to get farther away by purchasing a car under a false name, but the police had already discovered the body at the scene and began tracking them, leading to their immediate capture. The 4 of them were arrested on the day of the incident: Lee Jae-geun, Heo Jeong-bin, Lee Nam-dong, and Yang Jeong-won. These 4 underwent about a month of investigation afterward. Then, the police confiscated their phones and conducted forensic analysis. But on Yang Jeong-won's phone, they found a suspicious audio recording. It was a recording from April 12th, but it had been deleted, so they recovered it and listened to it. And it was shocking. Yoon Ji-soo's body, the guys are going to move it again. They said everyone has to come, so you should get ready too. Huh? Yoon Ji-soo is an alias, by the way. A body? What does this even mean? Come to think of it, the group was arrested in Daejeon, but they were all originally from Gimhae, Gyeongsangnam-do. So, just in case, the police checked with the Gimhae police, and it turned out that a high school girl had been reported missing on March 30th. Ah, yes. That student's name is Yoon Ji-soo, 16 years old. The police's suspicions were right on target. The missing person, Yoon Ji-soo, that's the name from the phone call. As soon as this new case came to light, the police put strong pressure on Yang Jeong-won. Then she said, "I didn't kill her. The other guys did it. I just helped because I had no choice. The body? The body was buried in the hills near Hwangjo-jo. About 2 weeks after this group was apprehended, on May 2, 2014, the body of 16-year-old Yoon Ji-soo, who had gone missing, was discovered in a wooded area near Hwangyo Bridge in Daejeon, Changnyeong-gun, Gyeongsangnam-do, but the condition was beyond anything you could imagine. The body was actually covered in concrete. After several hours of work, they managed to separate the body and saw that it was badly damaged, with burn marks all over. It turned out that this was what those people in their 20s had done. The scene was so horrific that even veteran detectives couldn't hold back their nausea. What on earth happened to Jisoo? Let's go back in time to March 3, 2014, when the new high school semester began. After her parents divorced, Jisoo moved to Gimhae with her father. She went to school with excitement, but it wasn't easy for her to adjust to this new school. The reason was that, since it was such a small area, most of the students had come up from the same middle school. Groups had already formed. Jisoo tried to get closer to them, but to them, she was just a stranger. They also ostracized her for not speaking in the Gyeongsang-do dialect. Jisoo had nowhere to turn for comfort. Then, sometime later, she met a man through social media. He was Kim Pyu-min, 24 years old, and he treated Jisoo very warmly and kindly. He told her to talk to him anytime she was having a hard time, and contacted her and texted her every day. To 16-year-old Jisoo, this man in his 20s, Kim Kyu-min, just seemed really cool. She was completely taken in by his caring nature as well. Then, around March 15th, about 2 weeks before the missing person report, Jisoo met up with Kim Kyu-min after school. Kim Kyu-min said, "Hey, I'll help you clear your mind. Come with me." He suggested they go for a drive to the beach. Jisoo, feeling excited, left her house. That day, the two of them headed to Busan. Jisoo thought it would just be a short outing, but in reality, Kim Kyu-min had no intention of letting her go back. He suddenly drove not to the beach, but to a motel district. And there, Heo Jeong-bin, who had previously been introduced as an accomplice, was waiting. Kim Kyu-min handed Jisoo over to him, took the money, and left immediately. In other words, he sold her off. From this moment on, Jisoo's personal hell began. When she was led into the motel by Heo Jeong-bin, she found 4 other middle school girls and 2 men there. These men were Lee Jae-geun and Lee Nam-dong, who had appeared earlier in the Daejeon incident. And in addition to middle school student Yang Jeong-won, there were 14-year-old Heo Ji-soo, Jung Ji-yeon, and 15-year-old Yang Jeong-won. There were 4 girls in total. So who were these people? They were what's commonly called a runaway family. The men provided these girls with a place to stay, and in return, forced them into prostitution. After Jisoo was confined in this motel, she endured their violence and was also forced into prostitution. If we look at how it was done, the main people who sought out clients were Lee Jae-geun and Lee Nam-dong. They solicited customers through anonymous chat site. Problems can arise during prostitution, right? To prepare for this, they mainly chose middle-aged men who would be easy to overpower, and all the money earned in this way went straight into their pockets. While Jisoo was living through these hellish days, on the night of March 29th at 9 p.m., an urgent call came from Kim Kyu-min. Kim Kyu-min is the person who sold Jisoo earlier. The reason for the call was that Jisoo's father had reported her missing, so a police investigation had begun. But since there was a record of contacting her on social media, Kim Kyu-min was the first to get caught. Now, if that's the case, it's only a matter of time before this prostitution operation in Busan is exposed. So, after much deliberation, Lee Jae-geun, Heo Jeong-bin, and Lee Nam-dong decided to just let Jisoo go. In return, they made her promise never to reveal what had happened. Fortunately, Jisoo is able to return to her father's arms. But then, the father immediately sensed something was wrong when he saw his daughter at home. Unlike before, she was extremely anxious and kept looking around warily. She would also flinch in shock whenever anyone touched her. Her whole body smelled of cigarettes, and she had bruises all over. Sensing right away that his daughter had been involved in a crime, the father finally learned the whole story after persuading her for a long time. His daughter had been kidnapped, assaulted, imprisoned, and even forced into prostitution. What parent wouldn't lose their mind upon hearing something like this? So my father told me to go to the police station as soon as it was light. But at that moment, Jisoo asked if she could go to church and attend a service before that. The next day at 1 p.m., she went to the church she usually attended, together with her father. But this is where another tragedy began. It just so happened that the father and daughter were attending services in different locations within the church. So they were separated for a short while, and as Jisoo was walking alone toward the other chapel, she was suddenly overwhelmed by a fear so intense it felt like she couldn't breathe. It was because Yang Jeong-ha and Yang Jeong-won, the middle school girls from the runaway group, had come looking for her. Somehow, they knew that she had confessed everything to her father. So as soon as the two of them saw Jisoo, they grabbed her by both arms and dragged her away. That's how, during her brief visit to the church, she was kidnapped once again. Meanwhile, when the father found out his daughter was missing, he rushed straight to the Gimhae police station. He clung to their pant legs, desperately begging them to please find his daughter. But here, the police were shockingly indifferent. "Sir, please. There's an order and a pattern to investigations, you know." So they told him to just go home and wait. Of course, he told them everything that his daughter had been forced into prostitution, kidnapped, and held captive. But for some reason, the police made a huge mistake by treating the case as a simple runaway. With the police refusing to take action like this, the desperate father decided to take matters into his own hands. Remembering that his daughter had been held captive in a motel in Busan, he went there without hesitation and searched for her by going from motel to motel, visiting hundreds of them one by one. At the same time, he also asked for help from the Yeonje police station in Busan, but they tried to avoid taking responsibility. They told him to report it to the Gimhae police station since it was under their jurisdiction. Meanwhile, where was Jisoo, who had been kidnapped? She was being held captive in Ulsan, not Busan. They again claimed that Jisoo had betrayed them and forced her into prostitution again as an act of revenge. Previously, she had been forced to be with 4 men over the course of a week, but this time she was made to sleep with an average of 3 men per day. There were times when she was forced into prostitution more than 8 times a day, and the money they made from this was as much as 1.2 million won per day. But their atrocities didn't end there. They would habitually beat Jisoo every single day. On top of that, the level of violence kept escalating, and on April 4th, Jisoo secretly accessed Facebook, but she got caught. As soon as that happened, a group beating began immediately. And from that point on, the group organized themselves into shifts to systematically monitor Jisoo. Also, because they wanted to avoid police pursuit, they kept changing locations, moving not only around Ulsan, but also to motels in Daegu. At some point, for these people, beating Jisoo became a kind of entertainment. They would deliberately provoke fights, saying things like, "Hey, if you fight her and win, we'll let you go," and would incite and lead the assaults with such promises. The men would watch this scene as if they found it entertaining. Now, from this point on, I'll briefly describe the severity of the torture and pain she endured. If you feel it's too much to handle, please feel free to skip ahead. I'll also do my best to moderate the level of detail. First of all, Lee Jae-geun struck Jisoo's throat multiple times. He also slammed a fan down onto her collapsed body. The most severe torture was inflicted by Heo Jeong-bin, who would frequently strip her and then beat her. He also poured 2 bottles of soju into a naengmyeon bowl and forced her to drink it. When she vomited after drinking it, they made her lick it up. She even begged for just a sip of water, but they boiled water in a kettle and poured it all over her body. Despite Jisoo crying out for her life in this horrific pain, they instead told the other girls nearby, "Hey, now you try to pour the hot water on her," ordering them to do the same. As a result, Jisoo suffered severe burns all over her body. Blisters would form and burst repeatedly. After about 10 days of torture, from March 30th to April 9th, Jisoo's body was completely destroyed. Her esophagus stopped functioning, so she couldn't even swallow food. By this point, even the perpetrators realized that she was now in a critical condition. It was obvious that, at this rate, she wouldn't survive much longer. So, at 10 p.m. on April 9th, two men, Lee Jae-geun and Heo Jeong-bin, along with middle school students Jung Ji-hyun and Heo Ji-soo, 4 people put Ji-soo in a car. They drove around the Daegu area and then parked the car in an industrial district in Daseogu. It was a quiet place, and there, the group started playing a game of omok, a board game, similar to gomoku. The loser of the game would have to beat Ji-soo. At that moment, Ji-soo desperately needed to use the bathroom, so she briefly got out of the car, but she could barely take a single step. Barely managing to crawl, she made her way to the public restroom to relieve herself, but the perpetrators hardly paid any attention to this. They were focused on their game, and figured that, in her condition, there was no way she could escape anyway. It was also late at night, so there was no one else around. After finishing their game, they resumed their assault on her. Then, as they were driving back to the motel, Heo Jeong-bin said to the victim, Ji-soo, "Hey, if you die, you must feel really wronged." "So, who would you take with you?" he asked in a joking manner. Struggling, Ji-soo hesitated for a moment, but when they told her to answer quickly, she pointed with her hand it was Lee Jae-geun. At that, Lee Jae-geun, enraged, began to mercilessly punch and kick her, and this assault continued all the way until they arrived at the motel parking lot. To make matters worse, all 4 of them joined in and continued the assault in the parking lot. In the end, at 12:30 a.m. on April 11th, Ji-soo, curled up on the backseat floor of the car, died of acute heart failure. It was only then that the group realized the seriousness of the situation and knew they had to dispose of the body. So, the 4 of them got back in the car and headed to an orchard located in Daejeon, Changmyeong-gun, Gyeongsangnam-do. It's not known exactly why they chose the orchard, but considering they moved there immediately after the incident, it seems likely that one of the 4 had some connection to the place. At 2 a.m., Lee Jae-geun and Heo Jeong-bin each took a pickaxe and a shovel and started digging a hole. At that time, the middle school girls, Jung Ji-young and Heo Ji-soo, were shining their phone flashlights to provide light. Soon after, they pushed the body into the hole. They poured the gasoline they had prepared and set it on fire. But everyone, did you notice anything strange as you listened to the story? Just now, it was said that Ji-soo's body was secretly buried in the orchard in Daejeon, Sincheonri. But earlier, the place where the police found the body was a hill near Hwangokjo in Daejeon. What does this mean? The perpetrators reburied the body. After the 4 of them finished the crime and returned to the motel, they thought about it and realized it was April. That's usually the blooming season for fruit trees. During this season, orchard workers deal with pests, spread fertilizer, and sometimes uproot old trees and plant new ones. Wait a minute. What if, while doing that, the buried body gets discovered? That anxiety started to set in. So in the end, they decided to move the body to the hill. This time, all 7 accomplices, Lee Jae-geun, Heo Jeong-bin, Lee Nam-dong, and the 4 middle school girls, Jung Ji-young, Heo Ji-soo, Yang Jeong-won, and Yang Jeong-won decided to join in. This information was previously found on Yang Jeong-won's cell phone. They brought cement with them. It was to block the smell of decomposition. Then, at 2 a.m. on the 14th, they went to the orchard, took out the body, and moved it to a mountain area. As before, the female students shone light with their cell phones, while the 3 men secretly buried the body. On top of that, they poured cement mixture, then covered it with rocks and soil to completely conceal it. But here, they made a mistake they hadn't anticipated. They accidentally dropped the car key into the cement mixture. They needed to go home, but the car key was missing. So they had to call a tow truck. The driver who responded to the scene at that time remembered the group clearly. We came here as a group to go fishing, but we dropped the key in the water." That's what they said, and then asked to be taken all the way to Daegu. But according to the article's memory, they were just young kids playing innocently. There was no sign at all of nervousness, anxiety, or guilt from just having disposed of a body. After that, they drifted from one motel to another for about a week, then went to Daejeon where they committed additional crimes, and eventually the whole story came to light. The prosecution brought as many as 22 charges against these 7 perpetrators. It's hard to even list them all murder, of course, but also assault, theft, bodily injury, luring minors, and even sexual exploitation. They truly committed a slew of serious felonies. They are truly terrible people. Especially during the investigation, something incredibly frustrating came to light. Shockingly, before Jisoo's murder, one of the perpetrators, Lee Jae-geun, had already been taken to the police station. One of the parents of the female perpetrators had reported their daughter for involvement in underage prostitution, but at the time the police said there wasn't enough evidence and just let him go. But even then, Lee Jae-geun already had 25 prior convictions. 25 prior convictions. He had charges like injuring a family member and underage prostitution. For example, one of his crimes was that he asked his father to buy him a car, and when his father refused, this happened. For that reason, he assaulted his grandmother and stabbed her in the stomach with a knife. He also once locked up a friend's younger sister and forced her into prostitution. He is truly the worst of the worst. But even though these facts would have come out with just a little investigation, the police didn't properly check and just let him go. Because of that, 2 more people ended up being murdered. Now, the trial was held in 2 places. Previously, due to the robbery and murder charges against Mr. Kim in his 40s in Daejeon, the 4 members of the group Lee Jae-geun, Heo Jeong-bin, Lee Nam-dong, and Yang Jeong-won now stand in trial at the Daejeon court. Also, Yang Jong-ha, Heo Jisoo, and Jang Ji-hyun, who were arrested in connection with the Jisoo case, will be tried at the Changwon court. But these guys are minors, right? What kind of verdict do you think was reached? In the end, not only for assault, but also for neglecting to prevent the death while playing the game and participating in the disposal of the body, Heo Jisoo and Jung Ji-hyun were sentenced to a minimum of 4 years and a maximum of 7 years in prison. And among the middle school girls, Yang Jeong-ha, who was known to have been the harshest toward Jisoo, received an even longer sentence, a minimum of 6 years and a maximum of 9 years in prison. For reference, the court judged that before they were perpetrators, they were actually victims. In fact, even before Jisoo was kidnapped, these individuals were already here for the day. But all 4 female students were assaulted and forced into prostitution by Lee Jae-geun, Heo Jeong-bin, and Lee Nam-dong. It was also confirmed that they were threatened at the time of the secret burial. Moreover, after Jisoo's death, the violence from these men was once again directed at the 4 female students. They forced them into prostitution without letting them sleep for more than an hour a day. But even so, I don't think that excuses any of the girls' crimes. At first, they say they participated in the assaults because of coercion, but as time went on, they also took part voluntarily. In particular, it is said that Yang Jong-ha committed assaults of a very serious nature. Meanwhile, the trial held in Daejeon. This is even more serious. The case went all the way to the Supreme Court, and in the end, Heo Jeong-bin was sentenced to life imprisonment and ordered to wear an electronic anklet for 30 years. Lee Nam-dong received 35 years in prison, and Yang Jeong-won, who was a minor, was sentenced to a minimum of 6 years and a maximum of 9 years. There is one person left, Lee Jae-geun. Lee Jae-geun had to go through one more trial. The law regarding violent acts that was applied in this Daejeon murder case was ruled unconstitutional before the Supreme Court trial, so the case was sent back for retrial. But in the end, at the retrial, he was sentenced to life imprisonment for murder and robbery murder. There is another person who cannot be left out here, Kim Gyu-min, who sold Jisoo, was also sentenced to 3 years in prison. As the full story of this horrific Gimhae high school girl murder case became known to the public, the Gimhae Central Police Station faced a flood of criticism above all else. They took the father's missing person report too lightly, and in fact the investigation only began on April 12, the day after Jisoo's death. So, if the Daejeon police station hadn't found the connection in this case, it might have been buried forever. There were 7 people involved in the incident, and while they were the perpetrators, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that the police, who stood by and did nothing until Jisoo died, were also complicit. As of 2025, all the female perpetrators except Lee Jae-geun and Lee Nam-dong have been released from prison. Here it is known that Heo Jeong-bin died of illness in prison in January 2025. The female students who were released must now be in their mid-20s.